Ha Hello, good evening from High G's at 8 o'clock on a Thursday evening. Now, an interesting one tonight. So, I'm a guy that likes to ask questions. Well, this week I was, I guess, stopped and just allowed time to ask these questions. In essence, I had an opportunity this week because my guest for this evening is, I think, a lot of our viewers on the JFTI podcast this will resonate. My guest that was supposed to be on tonight had a last minute call and a change of shift, so he couldn't be on. So we're going to reschedule, and I kind of wondered what I would do. Because I think, let me ask you a question, and because I've asked this, do we believe that things happen to us for a reason? Who believes that? Who believes that things always happen for a reason? Because I do, right? Only if you do something about it. You've got to look for the signs, haven't you? You've got to just kind of be open to, messages being sent and kind of be open to the signs, right? But I do. I genuinely believe things happen for a reason. What do we say? So, second of all, here's the opportunity. I think, your good lady wife does. Well, she's a smart lady, isn't she? She's a smart lady. So, what I started to think was, how about a podcast that just explains why I started this podcast? And I thought, oh, man, that would be really dull. So I kind of thought, well, why is it important to me that music was part of this podcast? So that question was like rolling around my head. I'm like, well, maybe I can answer that question. And then obviously, I've kind of gone, well, after the last time that this happened, I'd kind of gone, what will happen again if I have no guest, but I still see a point in recording a podcast? And I was like, well, last time was great. Can't be that smart. She married Dave. Well, hey, listen, that was a smart move as well, mate. You know it was. So I throwed all of these questions together, and I was like, I know. What we'll do is we'll be a bit more prepared and throw something together that hopefully will maybe some bits resonate, but actually maybe be enjoyable for those watching. And if nothing else, I'll do what I do best. Mr. Barlow's on. Good evening. He's going to say talking pish. But I thought tonight I would see if I could talk pish for a little while, but hold your attention with an interesting story. One interesting story, possibly. I looked at the date, as I always do on a Thursday, and start typing in JFDI podcast, and the date, the 26th of August. And then remembered, well, next week is going to be next week. It's going to be next Thursday is going to be the 2nd of September, into the month of the year that is my 50th year on the planet. So next week's recording, I've already recorded, right? So next week's podcast, I've already got it. Can you guarantee you won't digress? No, mate. No, I cannot. I'll be off on a tangent. I'm pretty sure I will. You know me. You know me too well. Where was I? So, the 26th of August, last podcast in August, but also it's 3 days. I'll do my best, Andy. I'll do my best. It's 3 days before the day that would have been my grandpa Ernest's 101st birthday. Man, whew, right? So my grandpa would have been 101. So why did I think that I would mention my grandpa? Well, because my grandpa Ernest, my mum's dad, who hailed from Brighton and moved to Scotland in the days of after the war and married my granny. This man was part of the inspiration. So for anybody that's read, and this is kind of where I kind of I can introduce a little bit of music to you, right? And also I'm gonna listen. You know I'm gonna do it, but I'm not gonna plug it for long. I'm just gonna show you the book, The Disappearing Scotsman, and tell you that the main inspiration for the one of the main protagonists in the book, a chap called Arthur, aka the Sheriff, was a combination of my grandpa Ernest and somebody else. And so I kind of had, I'm getting this into my mind, and I'm like, oh man, yeah, it's his birthday, and he's the inspiration for the book. And we've had so much fun kind of talking about it, selling copies of it, having feedback on it. It's been a journey. I've loved it. And I was like, how could I pay a little tribute to my grandpa? I know it only took 6 minutes. Mate, it could have taken 6 seconds. So how could I pay him a bit of a tribute? And I thought, well, perhaps I just do it in the same way as we do each week on the podcast. Is just talk a little bit about him, tell you a little bit about him, and maybe like for example, that he again inspired me when I was 17. Little bits from the book that are kind of in there, but fact, right? My grandpa, he inspired me to join the Air Force myself. So at 17, and I think it was stories about India, when he was, when he served during the war. He told me about this, and he gave me a present. It was like a little button badge, a little brass RAF button badge, and I was given one of them. Like it was like proper brass, I think. This one, I always used to kind of shine it up, and little things like that. Kind of, I've still got it. I don't have it to show you tonight, but I do have a few other things to show you. It's little things like that. Little things like when I think of I took trips away with my granny and grandpa, for example, right, down to England, and there's again, I think it's in the book. There was a time when we were driving back from my uncle's house, who lived down in, I think we was in, where was it, in Portsmouth at the time when we went to visit him. And I went down with my granny and grandpa, stayed with my uncle, came back on the way back up the road, and right at Banbury Cross. I was like, Grandpa, I'm not really feeling well. And he was like, oh, I can't stop the car. He like drove as quickly as he could to stop the car, and I barfed all over the back seat. Door open, there, all out. And I think back to it, not one raised voice. Everything was so cool and calm. Well, anyway, I'm not really digressing. I'm kind of some of my memories of my, no need. He said it for free, mate. Yeah. So the thing is, right? Family, it means so much to us, doesn't it? Right? This was part of the this was part of my inspiration to join the Air Force. In turn, it was actually a gift from my mum that was a genuine. It was on tape. The first time I got it, it was on like a C90, and I got this speech, and it was called "The Disappearing Scot," and this was a speech that he gave at the Toastmasters. For those that you know, so this actually happened, and I was given it years ago, absolutely years ago, but I was like, I need to do something with that. I need to do something with it. And I decided that that there would be a little tribute in there as well. So it's all been kind of lovely in the way that it's all sort of wrapped into a nice story, and it's been amazing to share it with you. And I think the last sort of like how long are we looking at? I think February when we started the podcast, right? I have sat and every week increasingly just like been in awe of the stories that I'm hearing from ex-forces colleagues. I kind of tried to throw some other little bit of other people that I've met along the way on my journey into the mix here as well. We've had some really amazing feedback on the podcast, and listening to the stories, it's kind of made me, it just reinforces how important family is. And that age old, you can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends. And I think that when I look back, on that military career spanning sort of 12 years, but that kind of going back to 1989 when I joined up, and the people that are now still part of my life, would it not be true to say that you can choose your family as well? Because you know what I mean. You know what I mean? It's part of that, and it's been listening to the stories of that I've heard from you guys talking about family as well, and how important that is. It's just it's all kind of tied in, right? To this wonderful journey that we're all on. So there's the first part for you. I definitely believe that things happen for a reason, and the reason that I was like, oh, this book, because we jumped on from this book and answering the question of like why it's so important that music is in the podcast. I'm like, for every guest that comes on, by the way, right? For every guest that comes on the podcast, Andy's mentioned it there. I sent everybody like a little thank you card. It's got a little code in it, and it allows you to download a copy of the audiobook of the book, right? I've created a playlist of songs from the book as well. So there's music tied in there as well. And it was one of my guests who had started listening to the audiobook who this week, and this is where planets aligning, call it what you will, and brings the music in with a big splash. I got sent, two things happened this week. So one guest sent me a picture of a book called The Alchemist, mentioned in the Disappearing Scotsman. So he sends me a picture of The Alchemist, and at the same time that day, right, what song would I choose for that though? At the same time that day, that arrived. Now, this came from a picture of a guest that had been on. This came in the post from a guest that had been on as well. And what happened, I was like, ooh, I thought of The Alchemist, and I thought of my poet friend, and it made me flash back to the Falklands 2000. And you're kind of going, Richardson, what the fuck is going on in your mind, right? How did you get from The Alchemist? The Alchemist, which is a book about an Andalusian shepherd boy named Santiago, who goes in sight of his dreams. He follows his dreams. He goes to kind of find himself, and he goes through. Where does it take him? It takes him to the pyramids via like, what was it, the Tangiers, yeah, and he like meets some crazy people along the way, including possibly a real alchemist. So yeah, love that book. And then when the poetry came in, it made me remember, oh, poetry, this man, Jim Morrison. I kind of made the connection between the poetry and the alchemist back to a trip to the Falklands, because I was on my R&R. Now, I'd been down at Mount Kent for, or was it MPA? MPA. Been down there. It was the second time down. I qualified for, I don't know, you know, you're like, oh, you're not able to get over there now. So I gets over to Azzy, and I'm on R&R. And we'd been taken to this beach. And I kid you not, right, it was like just being on a desert island. It was, don't ask me what it was. There was like 5 of us there that were kind of in the accommodation ascension together. And we'd gone to this beach, and we were sitting on this beach, and it brought back this question that was asked. And the question that was asked was, in and around, who, or if you could go, like, imagine you could only have one of these on a desert island to accompany you, one album, one book, one person, and one film, what would they be? So, and I remember what they were, okay? Because the book was The Alchemist. The person was Jim Morrison. Now, what song would we choose for Jim Morrison? I wonder. Anyway, so picture this, right? So that was my one person, and that was my book. This was my album, The Stone Roses, by the Stone Roses. And my film was this, Scent of a Woman, starring Al Pacino as Colonel Frank Slade, ex-US Marine, who is blinded after an accident that he may or may not have caused himself during some hijinks in his time in the military. He plays he's a vet. He's blinded. He's fed up with his life, and he just doesn't really want to. Hoo-ha! Yes, you know the film. Along comes one young Charlie to babysit him for the weekend, played by Chris O'Donnell. Fantastic. And it tells of their trip to New York, where they help each other kind of find themselves in a very non-homosexual way. It's very a touching movie. So I chose that. All right. And yeah, I've got the soundtrack to that as well. So these were the choices that I made, right? The important thing for me about this was, and the reason I give you a bit of a description about, you know, what the film's about and why it's so important to me is, although neither of my grandparents were blind and had kind of left, my grandpa, who I spoke about right back at the beginning, Grandpa Ernie, whose birthday it would have been on the 29th of August. He was in the Air Force, inspired me to join the Air Force. But the sheriff in the story is a combination. It's brought together as a combination of my Grandpa Ernie and my Grandpa Tom, who's my dad's dad. This film, Scent of a Woman, reminds me of my dad's dad. He's kind of got that. My Grandpa Tom had that kind of hoo-ha about him. And he really, really reminds me, that film. So this is where all my thinking was at. Boom, 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 boom. Pulled all this together this week. It's all just kind of fallen into place. All of the music, and I hope you've watched what I've done for the last 20 minutes. I've tried to pause for a song, and I've kind of tried to do that, deliberately, and you'll see why. So here's the thing, right? That was my grandpa Tom. And all of these things have kind of, I've come into my mind. I've remembered this. And I'm putting this book, so this is the other reason I showed you this, is that First Drafts and Photographs by Matt Lloyd. Matt Lloyd, one of my guests, lovely chap, amazing spoken word artist. He sent me this. Now you can look at you can see how big it is. It's quite a thin one. It's quite a thin pamphlet one. So, but it's great though, and colour and stuff. I'm not going to read any of it out for you. Only just go Google Matt. Listen to Blokes. Amazing. Amazing. The original, it's better than the 2020 version. Matt knows why. I'm only kidding. Yeah, amazing, amazing, amazing. So I was putting this away on the shelf. Guess what? I was like, where does it need to go? I'm quite anal about this. It needs to go next to stuff that is like, of a similar size, right? And so I'm putting this in. You just need to imagine, right, that's going in the shelf like this. Slips in next to this. I can't see what's in there. And I saw this just sticking out the top. I pulled it out. And I was like, oh, this is called F.I. Blues. Now this is a book of poetry that I released on paperback in 2013. You might not know about it. You might. And this here was in there, like this. And I opened it. And I came to this poem, which, if you'd please indulge me for a minute that it will take, I'd like to share that poem with you. It's called One. Today I was asked a question, standing on a beach, with the sun in my face in a cemetery, 50 yards to my rear. One album, one book, one person, one film to accompany me, deserted and stranded. Why I chose the way I did is me. And a cemetery 50 yards to my rear? The answers will remain with me, although 2 hours later reason had gone. Funny how situations reveal character. After all that's passed, I'm here again. Choked, older, wiser, perhaps, amongst faces alien to me, watching my smile fade to grey, then back my thoughts I can't and won't share. Amid summer rain I lie dry, in limbo, caught waiting, thinking. Respite is brief on the Citrus Express, floods arrive as expected, are equally repressed. So I seek comfort in food, T-bone steak and vanilla cheesecake. I finish, I'm full, yet so empty and drained, until the angels begin to swim in my brain. My words seem so utterly silent as I allow my heart to be caressed, feeling completely dejected, lost, a giggle and a laugh. Once again, I'm myself. Pain, so much pain is banished. Silence, drifting, peace at last. Incredibly, miles cannot vanquish my love, is carried on the wind as I'm alone with private thoughts. So now, as I write to reach you all, peace, happiness, unity, and remembrance is all I ask. My sleepy heart reluctantly exhales its last breath tonight. Rest and recuperation, then tomorrow, fight the good fight. So that was in there. And thank you for indulging me, and thank you for the those of you that are still watching. That poem was written when I was in the Falklands. The gap between where I left you on the beach and told you about why each of those choices had happened and what kind of, why I'd chosen them, what was, the events leading up to that. I didn't tell you about the events leading afterwards, but I kind of now have. Because I left that beach and I went back to the camp. And when I got back to the camp, I didn't get past the guardroom, or I was asked to go to work. And then I had this phone call in an office that I'd never been in before. And I was told on there by somebody I had to go and phone my mum. Or I think I got to speak to my mum for a couple of minutes. And this was a phone call to tell me that my grandpa Ernie had died. And so I went away and I wrote that poem lying on my bed the night after, I think, because I went and ate some cheesecake and steak to make myself feel better. But what then better way? I did say, how could I pay tribute? I'd already done it, and I would love to just continue doing that. But hopefully that then answers the 3 questions that I posed at the start. But there's another thing to this, and it's kind of, I guess, the important thing, is that, yeah, that may well kind of tie everything together for me. But somebody said something to me last week. There was a few people that have been on this podcast, and one that's not yet, 2 that is not yet, managed to catch up at the weekend. And after a couple of swift ones, one of the guys grabbed a hold of me and he just said to me, keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. So, writing to reach you now, there's a song. Travis, there's a song. So, the point for me in answering that, why involve music in this podcast? Man, it defines our lives, right? We just need to look. What would life be without music, even if it's not that of the, everybody has their song, everybody has their thing. So I guess it's like that ingrained in me. If I was ever going to do a podcast, of course it was going to involve music. And tonight what I've done is to try and make something that I can take and pop, because we've now got 4 podcasts on Spotify. And I'm looking to do something special, integrating the music into that as well. So I can't wait for upcoming guests on the podcast. Yes, it is, Andy. You're absolutely right. It's the single most important reference point of our lives. You're so right. You're so right. And I know not everybody feels like that. It doesn't mean the same to everyone. But, I feel like that. You clearly do as well. And that's why, for me, we keep cracking on. We keep moving on. We keep talking music, and we keep talking about these memories, and we make more. That's what we do. Yes, Delta Lima. Music is the universal language. So listen, it's 8:30. You've listened to me, and thank you, warble on. But for very good reason. All will become clear. Yeah, you can still buy that on the website, or if you're on the podcast, you get it for now. And what did you think of the poem? I mean, you might not be like poetry, you might not be into poetry, but what do you think? Should I re-release that? I've got some more poems as well. Going to bring another book out. So I've talked for half an hour. Bang on, actually. 20:30. Not that it was planned this way or anything. I popped the link tonight into the Facebook on my homepage and on the High G's page. So if anybody wants to join and come and say hello tonight, Popmaster Everyday Radio 2, I get here mostly. Remember where I was? Yeah. Yeah. It's true, mate, isn't it? Mate, that's it. That's what it does for me. It just, unless I wasn't born, then I'm fucked. So open floor is what I was getting to. If anybody, this is almost as if I've planned it this way. If anybody would like to click on the link that I put in the comments, it will give you access to the studio tonight. And the only one thing that I ask is, if you want to come in and say hello, well, just come in and give me like 5 minutes of chat and tell me, if you were deserted on a desert island, what one album, what one book, what one person, what one film would you have with you? We've got half an hour. So come and jump in. Tell me. Or I'll talk more pish. You choose. Does anybody want to come in? Yeah. Okay. We'll see what I can do. Where's the link? The link should be on the Facebook page. But do you know, I should just pop it on the High G's. What's on the going to put it? Just going to put it on the High G's homepage. That's the easiest thing, because then it's just there, isn't it? That's what I'll do. That's what we'll do. Yeah, see. Need to be better prepared, Richardson. Yeah, it should be on there. Have a look on the post. Right, it's in High G's now. StreamYard Live. Go onto the High G's webpage and just click on the link. Kaboom. There we go. All right, what's happening? Over. I need a drink. Listen to my voice. Right. Come on then, Andy. Oh, Andy, I'll send you on. I'll messenger it, you, Andy. That seems the easiest way. All right, there you go, mate. Does anybody else want it? Who wants it? Come and have some. One album, one book, one person, one film. As long as you want. And a reason why. Anybody else? Who we? No, come on. Come on. Mate, you need to come on again. You need to come on again. One album, one book, one person, one film. I know who your one person is, Gary. You would take me, wouldn't you? I know you would. All day. With or without the beard. Hello, mate.
Hey, mate, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. What do you think to the story? Did you hear it all? Did you fall asleep?
Yeah. No, absolutely not. I wouldn't do the injustice of falling asleep as something that's so close to your heart, mate, to be honest. It was nice to hear, mate. I've just had some new gigs and I'm trying to get used to them. I had both bifocals last time, varifocals last time, but these are a bit stronger because I'm getting an old cunt, so they're a little bit stronger. If I look up you like that, I'm not trying to look up your nose or anything, because I'm just trying to get used to the visuals. But yeah. I got used to my last ones, but these are a little bit stronger, obviously, because I'm 51 now, mate, and I'm an old shit.
Mate, you're not 51, are you?
Yeah, mate. Unfortunately, yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
Jeez, oh, that's me. I'm 50 next month.
I know, mate. It's amazing where the time goes. It's ridiculous.
I know. Do your kids tell you you're old as well, like regularly?
No, well, I've only got one kid. It's Evan. In fact, you can just see that nice little photo when he's a baby behind me. We went down to Cornwall when he was a baby. He's now no longer a baby. He's 8 years old, going on 18, knows everything. Can't tell him anything. Well, pretty much like me, actually. I think we spoke about it on the podcast, mate. He's got ADHD, so have I. You can't tell him anything. He knows everything.
Actually, that reminds me of my 14-year-old daughter, who is exactly like me as well.
Sorry, say that again, mate. Someone came on and talked over the top.
I would say that's like my 14-year-old daughter is exactly like I was, exactly like I probably still am. I wrote something down today. I was saying, ask for forgiveness rather than permission. And I kind of giggled and chortled to myself. And I said to Karen, that could kind of really be my motto, couldn't it? And she went, and sort of like went, yes. And I went, and also it could be Charlotte's as well. Exactly the same. She's like that. Yeah. So anyway, listen, what do you think? One album, one book, one person, one film. What you saying?
One book is called The Dice Man by Luke Reinhardt. It was given to me by my uncle. I think probably about 5 or 6 years after he graduated from university, and he gave it to me when I was probably about 13 or 14. He said, "Read this. It's a life-defining book." Yeah, and I've read it about 7, 8, 9 times now. It's quite funny.
Did you mention that on the podcast before?
No, I don't think so. But I think me and you spoke about it before. I certainly mentioned it when we were at Nita's Head, because it's basically about a bloke who decides to live his life by the roll of a die.
Yes.
I do remember. Yeah, and I think I can't remember. It's a while since I think he's a psychiatrist or something like that. Anyway, he makes a list of things he wants to do from good to bad. So I think in the start he says, if I roll this number, I stay in bed and go to sleep. If I roll this number, then I go downstairs and rape Arlene, which is his mate's wife downstairs. And it goes progressively worse from there. Right. But it's interesting that you would, how life goes, and how you say everything's by chance or by luck. Then, if that's the case, then I think the message is, why not just roll a couple of dice and go for it, because it would end up any different anyway.
Yeah.
And it's very thought provoking. I mean, it's not something I would like to do. Certainly not in the bad things, anyway, because you're challenging yourself, then, aren't you? And then if you're true to yourself, you've got to follow through. And the repercussions of some of the stuff that you would actually put down, possibly, you wouldn't want to put up with.
Whereabouts would you stop? Whereabouts would you go? No, I can't do it anymore.
I don't know. I suppose it depends how many green monsters I've had. there will probably be no limits there, Pinky.
I think there's people that would like speak to both of us and say you behaved in your early 20s like that's how you lived your life anyway.
yeah, more than likely. Look, talking about that as well, I don't want to get into I mean, we've done the podcast, but I mean, looking back on stuff, I mean, I treated some people very horribly. and I'm not going to blame that on any type of ADHD or anything I had. I mean, I think there was a lot of peer pressure to be maybe not bullying people, but to, you know, I think the banter got a bit extreme sometimes, where it could possibly have been
misconstrued,
construed as bullying. And you know, if you saw someone who was weak and it made people laugh, then it was very easy to put on them people. I don't feel great about any of that.
Yeah.
That happened at the time. You think, especially when you're young, but actually, looking back on some of the probably things I've said and done to some people, I very much regret that, to be honest.
But mate, don't you think? Do you know? And do you know what? Right? It takes something. It takes something to say that. You know, because there are people that go through their whole life, mate, and kind of either not even having the awareness. I've been the same. I look back and kind of go, oh my God, what a dick I was. That's kind of what I look. What an absolute grade A knob you were. But the thing is, and I've done the same, I've apologized to people that I've come across and I've gone, listen, I remember being an absolute complete cock to you when we were younger. And most people that I've spoken to face have gone, mate, we were kids. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like we were so young. We were so young. You know, and you like to think that we've grown up maybe a little bit now. A little bit.
Well, I look at it. I look at it as this now, and it took me to. I mean, it took me to have a child to probably understand this, but I don't think I would be comfortable or like the fact that maybe my son would be that weak person who is vulnerable and could be the silent person and would be in the corner, was getting absolutely twatted by someone like me and made feel even worse for absolutely no reason. So maybe it's saying that for me to realise that, we were young, but we weren't children.
No, I know. Yeah, I know what you mean, mate. But it's like you say, you know, that the mere fact that you kind of, you know, you're now kind of going, listen, this is who I was, but it's not who you are now. It's
no, absolutely. It's just a shame that it took to being late 30s and through my 40s into 50 to realise that, and you know.
Mate, better late than never, I say. Better late than
absolutely.
never.
I mean, there is people who have absolutely no filters and absolutely no regrets, no matter what they've done, and they're the people who never learn and actually never cared in the first place. I mean, I would never say that I never cared and I wasn't a caring or thoughtful person, but obviously, sometimes you get swept up in the moment, and when people start laughing, you do it all the more.
Yeah, I know, that's true.
Just for effect, and sometimes you do sit back and go, actually, you were an absolute cock there, and you shouldn't have said that, and that was absolutely vile. And how do you think you made that person feel then? And you know, you can't take it back, but you can just make yourself a better person, and hopefully you pass on to your kids and make sure that they don't become some of the horrible parts that you were.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate. It's what they say, don't they? They say about children, they're the best of you and the worst of you.
Yeah.
They are.
So what do we get to, Pink? We've had the book.
Right, so we've had the book. What about one person next?
Rick Mail. Bar no one.
Rick Mail.
Yeah, 100%. He defined my humour. I grew up with the young ones and Filthy Rich and Cat Flap and Bottom. Yeah. He defined my humour, and the Dangerous Brothers on Friday Night Live or Saturday Night Live on Channel 4. Mate, my absolute comedy hero. No one could ever surpass him. He just let me go and get something, because I want to show you something. This is what my family bought me for my 50th. Just bear with me. I'll go upstairs while I'm doing it. This is how much they know I love him. Let me get it.
Hey.
They bought me this. Can you see that?
Oh, mate, yes. Just as the light caught it, I thought it looked like what was the guy? What was the guy that? No, I'm not going to say it. Makes it insulting. Actually, it's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's a proper signed one from him, and I don't suspect it was very cheap either, because obviously with him being brown bread now, you're not going to get it again. He didn't sign many, so
yeah.
So they obviously from very very young age, my family have known where my sense of humour's come from. So
yeah,
that's so yeah. But born on Rick Mail, I would, if I could sit on a desert island, apart from my family, obviously, then I'd sit with him.
Brilliant.
100%.
One album?
Urban Hymns, The Verve.
Yes. Crikey, I was playing that just the other day as well.
And I pulled that out of the bag because there's so many, and I've probably done. Is it Urban Hymns? It's either Urban Hymns or Blue Line's Massive Attack. One of the two.
Oh,
I'll go with Urban Hymns purely for the fact that at the time when it came out, I can't remember how many times I played it in my car.
Brilliant.
It was unbelievable, and it never gets boring.
No, it doesn't. So many great tunes on there, right?
I don't know if I said on the podcast. You know, Cast No Shadow by Oasis. That was written for Ashcroft by Noel Gallagher.
Was it?
Yeah. If you look on What's the Story and have a look in the credits, it says for Richard Ashcroft.
Yeah.
Or dedicated to Richard Ashcroft.
Oh, brilliant! No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Excellent. Right, and one film.
This is a really hard one, and only because there's loads of films I can watch over and over and over again. So I could go down the RAF line of.
Do you want to think? I'll ask you a question. Do you want to think about it? Because Mr. Barlow is in the green room, and we can bring him in, and you can have a think about it, or you can just go for it. It's up to you.
I'll have a think because there's too. If I want a defining film, I'm going to have a little bit of think.
Right. Okay. I'll go and sit in the green room. I'm going to ask Gary. I'll bring Gary in. Gary, evening.
Chaps, how you doing?
All right, mate.
Mr. Barlow.
What was that, Mr. Barlow?
Always called Mr. Barlow.
Did I tell you that I was showing somebody the podcast on Spotify, and they went, Gary Barlow, episode 2. You're not fucking about, are you?
Straight to the top.
Right. Okay. Gary, who was in the green room serving drinks tonight?
I don't know, but he was topless.
Was he? Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, we better go and let Andy sort him out.
Yeah.
Right. What you got for me?
Right. What are we needing?
One. Let's go for what one do I want from you first? Oh, one person.
This would have to be like a double whammy, because if I'm going to take a book in with me,
yeah,
I can't read, so I'm going to need somebody with a nice voice.
You can read to you.
To read the book to me. So that rules the Wi-Fi. I would have to bring. I would have to bring yourself for your dulcet tones.
Oh,
you know, I could have a cross between Charlie Chan and a young, svelte-looking Robbie Coltrane reading to me in Scottish dulcet tones all day.
Yeah, so, you get bored. You get bored really quick. Although, but I do love it. I do love it. Right. So, with that, then, what book?
Spike Milligan, Puckoon.
Oh, right. Okay. Have you read that?
I have read bits and pieces of it.
Right.
And I've been sort of recommended that lots and lots and lots. And there's a guy in work would quote bits of it out to me and tell me bits about the book.
Yeah.
And as I say, I don't know.
Spike Milligan, what is it?
Puckoon.
How do you spell that?
Puckkoon.
Puckoon.
Yeah. There's a guy in work just used to talk about it all the time. He'd read me bits and pieces out to me, and it's absolutely hysterical. So I'd like to read the whole lot. And as I say, I know people reading, and believe it or not, I can't read very well. It's something that we discovered later on in life. And I would need, I wouldn't be able to read it myself, and that's embarrassing to say. But it's not really, because it doesn't bother me. But I would need someone to read it to me.
So what? So I need to check it out and like get recording it.
Like, I did take credit for your audiobook, because it wasn't me suggested I need an audiobook, and you've done
it. Well, do you know with the Alchemist thing? Dave Large, just he got the audiobook as well. He's just finished it as well. He sent me a message last week, and Karen was not happy because he paid me a massive compliment, which I'm not going to say because it's actually I'm embarrassed to like who he compared me to. I mean, really embarrassed, because who he compared me to was like an absolute literary genius, and I is not that. So
here's more.
So right, so we've got one person, we've got one book, one film, or one film and one album.
The album would be Evanescence, Fallen.
Yeah,
there's not a bad song on that.
Yeah, I remember you liked them right from the start, didn't you?
Before they were really, before they were famous, was listening to their stuff. But I just think there's not one bad tune on that album, and I think a lot of albums you get songs that they'll skip past.
Yeah,
and that you don't. Everything's an absolute banger on it.
Yeah.
So
all killer, no filler.
And
the film.
Can it take a TV series?
Yeah, if you want.
The League.
Oh, you and Bloody Gordon in The League.
Yeah, DVD. But The League is just, for anybody that hasn't seen it, is the funniest show that I think has ever been made. And I know, like Andy will talk about Filthy Rich and Cat Flop and all that. I used to watch that with Andy, Filthy Rich and Cat Flop and all back in the day, and the Dangerous Brothers are hysterical and are timeless. But for me, The League is just a cut above anything that's ever been made. And after 7 or 8 seasons, I stopped it, but it's a well-kept secret. Not everybody's heard of it, or not everybody's seen it, but it is so good.
Whereabouts can folk get it? I mean, I know where we get it, but where can
No, it was on Netflix for years, and then took it off. So I don't know where it is now, but I'm sure it'll be different. You can find it somewhere.
Fantastic.
Or otherwise.
There we go. One album, one book, one person, one film, or one series. Right, we'll bring Andy back in. Listen, we'll catch up soon.
Good luck, mate.
All right. Speak to you in a bit. Bye. Mr. Holmes.
Hello, mate.
You have a film?
I have 2. Is that allowed?
Yeah, that's allowed.
It's only because they're so far apart from each other, and I take joy out of both of them for very different reasons.
Yeah.
Firstly, Big, with Tom Hanks.
Yeah. Big.
Loved it. I just thought he played the child really well, but there's something about the feel good in that film. It's amazing. And he's one of my favourite actors as well. But I think I'm going to have to say The Shawshank Redemption.
Oh. Yeah.
For purely storyline and production, and just the ending, and just everything, the acting, the whole 9 yards. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I could have said Top Gun, Highlander, because I watched them 300 times every time. When I was at Bookers, we had two videos with Top Gun and Highlander. We used to come back when we were pissed. Paddy will remember this. We either watched Top Gun and Highlander every time we come back from the G in the little restroom in Gannick Block. But no, I can't think of a film that I've watched and gone, that's just some great stuff in there. So yeah, it's big for feel good, but for production and just an absolutely great cast and acting. I think Shawshank Redemption. Is that a bit poncy?
No, not at all, mate. It's a brilliant film, absolutely brilliant.
No, it is, but I think some people might say that just because it is a great film and not because they thought about it. You know what I mean?
Oh, mate, I loved it. I've not watched it. Like, that's the thing with it. I think I've only watched it maybe 3 or 4 times, not too many times. But it's like, it's one of those that when you see it on, and we don't do this very much now, do we? We kind of think of a film and then we go and find it and we just get it. But it's one of those that it's like, on those very rare occasions where you'd be kind of flicking through it to see what's on live telly, it's one of those that you'd kind of stop doing things, wouldn't you, when you see that and just get it on and just play it.
I mean, I could have pulled an embarrassing one out and said The Secret of My Success with Michael J. Fox, just purely because I've watched it about 1 million times.
Crikey.
I'm not even joking. I love it because he gets the burden loads of money. I mean, what's wrong about that?
Is that not? Did he not do that one right after? Was it he finished doing the Teen Wolf one? Was it not?
Yeah, Teen Wolf's another great film. But yeah, I think it was. It was around that time, when he was really popular, just before he did Back to the Future and that. Yeah. It's just very cheesy, very American. Lad with nothing goes to New York and becomes big, and I don't know. It's just something about the film that makes me laugh. But yeah, I think big purely the fact that I took a lot of joy out of that film and Shawshank, because it was a magnificent film.
It's fantastic. Brilliant. Listen, I'm going to, I'll just bring Mr. Barlow's there. Gary.
Here he is. Pads, how you doing, pal?
Hi, matey. All right?
Yeah, I'm right, cheers.
Betty Boo comment you sent in there for Betty Boo's greatest hits.
Yeah.
You done some boogie into that back in the day, mate?
Mate, the thing is, I want to apologise, Pad, because when I was on my podcast, I didn't mention you once, and I should have done, but you've got so little amount of time to remember so much stuff. And I know we didn't spend a lot of time together, but the time we did spend together was a lot of time, if you know what I mean.
It was messy.
We spent a lot of time together in a very little period, if you know what I mean.
It was messy.
Yeah, it was. I remember driving your blue Metro into Aberdeen, go to Zigzags with Nige Bondswell, all that kind of malarkey.
Yeah. Go stay in the car, Spike. Next thing, the car Zigzags. Yeah. I remember some stories, buddy.
Man. You keeping well, bud?
I'm doing very well at the minute, yeah.
Good, you're looking well, mate.
I'm feeling good.
Good.
The lights look a wee bit sort of anemic, whatever way my lighting is in here, but apart from that, I'm doing all right.
My head looks really fat, but I think that's because my phone's... Well, no, I think it's because I've got a fat head.
It's all here now. It's like 3 Ronnies.
Oh yeah, all with glasses, yeah. That's purely being in the dark and watching screens and then coming out to the light. That's what it does to you.
No, it's being 17 and 18, leaving home and having a room to yourself.
Yeah, that as well, yeah.
We
said would go blind, but nobody believes.
It's funny. I was sitting at the table tonight, and these were up here in high G's waiting, and I'd said to Kat, I'd picked my phone up and I just couldn't see it, and I was like, my eyesight is getting even worse. And she said, when was the last time you were at the opticians? And I was like, I don't even think it was a year ago. And it's just going and going and going.
As Andy said, I went on to these sort of bifocal, varifocal things for the first time last year. It takes some getting used to. You're going out your door and you're trying to go down the step to your front of your house and you're missing the ground and all because you can't adjust your eyes.
I picked my first setup pad a couple of years ago, and I went to Tesco shopping, and I nearly went over twice because I was just you've got to get used to either lifting your head or moving your eyes. If you don't, you're all over the place.
Your depth perception's totally gone.
Which is why I'm doing this at the moment, because it's the best way I can see us through the bottom of the lens. If I start doing that, you go all blurred. So
I've had these a year now, so I'm sort of okay. I know where I'm at. But
yeah,
listen,
it does.
Old fuck.
But they are great though.
Right. Do you want to? Did you see who else was on? Guys, Gary was on having a
Gary Homewood was on, wasn't he?
Yeah, Gary was on.
He took that week off and made a fortune on it.
He didn't half. Yeah. Thought you were going to go with Drop Dead Fred.
I could have gone with Drop Dead Fred. That was another, obviously with the Rick Mail connection. Yeah, I could have done, and I have laughed at it. But I'll probably wake up in the morning and go, fuck, why didn't I say that? But
when you think about it, we used to watch the same movies over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You had Better Off Dead. was one that always got watched all the time as well.
I mean, I could have gone with a Tom Clancy book as well, Without Remorse. I think I've actually read that 40, 50 times. So it's an amazing book. It's amazing.
What one? Tom Clancy?
Without Remorse.
Without Remorse.
Yeah, mate. It's something different. It's not just all about war. It's about if you know it's about if you watched anything or read in the books. There's a bloke called Mr. Clark. He's like the CIA operative. It's how he starts his life, and how he meets some woman after his wife gets killed. Anyway, it's amazing, and it flip flops between him, with this girl and what happens to this girl, and how he gets with how he deals with what happens to her, and then him being a special operative in Vietnam. It's spine tingling brilliant, and I leave it about a year and then I'll read it again. It just gets me every time. It's a great book.
I'll wait till they make a movie.
Hey?
I'll wait till they make the movie of that one.
No, they have done. They put it on Netflix, made Without Remorse. Completely changed all the characters. Completely changed all the story. They put a black bloke in his shot. Completely changed up.
That's the one on Amazon Prime at the minute.
Sorry, Amazon Prime. So I saw it come on. Went, oh, fucking yeah! They made a film of this. I went, brilliant. I'm going to watch it.
I turned it off halfway through.
About 15 minutes, and I went, fuck off.
It's rubbish.
It's not good.
Absolute joke. They've twatted it, mate. It's horrible. It's horrible to think that he's even signed off on that. I'm hoping not, because it's a pile of shit.
I turned it off.
Oh dear! And on that note, you can stay in the green room if you want. I think that's a great note. What song should we close on for tonight? That's the thing. As it goes over onto Spotify, well, we'll see. Anyway, gentlemen, say good night.
Hi, guys.
And thank you all very much for tuning in.
See you take care.
Next week with
Cheers,
a job.